Okay, I want to create a question of the day that I can ask students on a regular basis. Now, that question would be of type text. And as an example, the question might be PHP is the server-side scripting language used to view MySQL data. Now, that has two possibilities, that question. It's either true or false. So I could set it up where I have a character 5, let's say, for answer A and answer B, those options being true and false. But not every question is true or false. So maybe I'd ask a different question. Maybe I'd ask, what is the server-side scripting language used to view MySQL data? And then I've got four choices like PHP or JavaScript or Visual Basic or Java. Now I have an answer A, B, C, or D. But what if I had multiple choices, like not only PHP, JavaScript, Visual Basic, Java, COBOL, HTML, Python? I might have lots of different answers. That becomes a real problem. How would I design my data table to allow for, in some cases, 2, in some cases, 4, and in some cases, lots more than 4 possible answers? Well, here's what I got to do. Let's just switch it to what's your favorite color. And I'm going to set up an ID, which has question number 1, what is your favorite color? And then I'm going to create a whole nother table over here that has an answer that might be as much as 50. An answer with red, yellow, green, blue, purple as my choices. I could add more orange if I wanted to. But anyway, they all have a QID of 1. You see that? The same as my question ID up here. So where the ID field in this table has the number 1, this right here, which has a number 1 for an ID, but they're not related. It's related to the QID, the question ID. All of these have a QID of 1, so we know they all go to question number 1. Now, if I had question number 2, how do you feel about the Yankees? There are generally only 2 possibilities. Either you love them or you hate them. So question number 2, QID 2, there are 2 possibilities. You notice this field still has ID and it's going auto increment, so 6 and 7 relate to question number 2. Now, I might want to add things like a start date and an end date, so that the question might only be asked for 1 week during a given year. What's your favorite color? And then it switches to another question. So start date and end date. But that causes a little bit of a problem here too. Let's figure this out. Once I have that and someone chooses an answer, I need a whole nother table that says on this particular date, someone from this IP address, maybe I'm tracking their IP addresses, has answered question ID and answer ID. So this AID relates back to this ID field here, where this QID relates to this QID, which is actually really just this ID. Now, I don't truly need QID. Let me explain that as I move along. So potentially, somebody on the 2nd of January from these various IP addresses answered question number 1. A few days later, question number 2 was answered. Okay, and in this case, they both gave number 6 as an answer. They love them. Here we saw answer ID 1, 4, and 5, so we see that red and blue and purple are the 3 votes that they had there. We can tie that back. See, this is what a relational database is. There are 3 different tables here: the question table, the choices table, and the actual responses table. Whatever I'm going to call those, we'll see. Now, the real reason I have QID, I don't really need it, because when I said number 4 over here, I knew number 4 was related to question 1. So I really don't need it, but that would require me to use all 3 tables when linking these two. So I keep the QID here just so I know that QID relates to what is your favorite color, if it's QID of 1, and so on. But technically I don't need that, but I do need the answer ID here. Now, I've got questions from 2015. That was years ago. I don't need these questions, right? They're not going to be very much used this semester. So I've got to figure out how to handle that so that I can have some questions that are useful this semester. And the way I'm going to do that is I've got a daily.sql file that I'm going to give you, and it includes a lot of things like drop table if exists daily questions, okay, and then it's going to create that table if it doesn't already exist, all right, and it's got the ID field, the auto increment. It's done a little bit differently, and this is the default setting when you dump a file, and so it's got the primary key there. But anyway, and the first question is, what is your favorite color? And I've got the start date and the end date. But as I said, that's really not very useful this semester because that was years ago. So what I did here is I said, well, it's going to be, instead of that, what is your favorite color? And I'm going to say current date minus interval 5 day, comma, current date minus interval 3 day. So actually, it's going to have data from 5 days ago to 3 days ago. So it's actually not going to be used here either, but it will have some data in there that's kind of related. Now the second question, who's the greatest superhero? That's going to have an interval minus 2 to the current date. So that's going to include today in that. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to upload that daily.sql file, put it right there in my home directory, and then I'm going to execute that file with the mysql command, but with the redirector from daily.sql, and that will allow me to upload the data.